Hello everyone, and welcome to the Dungeon Learner's Guide. Today we are going to be taking a look at some of the basics you'll need to be playing Dungeons and Dragons, including some character sheets and the dice themselves. So keep in mind this is just the physical side of Dungeons and Dragons. Of course, there's a lot more to it, and all of this stuff can be found online. I will be putting some links into the description of this video in case you don't have the physical materials that you need. You can still play online with friends that way. So to start off, we'll take a look at the dice first, and then we'll get to the character sheet. So the dice, there are 7 of them total, ranging from a 20-sided dice, which is going to be the main one you're going to use, the D20, it's going to normally be called, to a D12, which I'm sure we can assume has 12 sides to it. There is a D10, which is 10 sides, a D100, which is the exact same thing as the D10, the only difference is that it has the 10's place on it, the D8, which has 8 sides, the D6, which is like your normal, everyday kind of dice, 6 sides, and the D4, which only has 4 sides. So, for Dungeons and Dragons, most of these are going to be used for things like damage happening or random occurrences, things like that. That would be the 12, the 8, the 6, and the 4. The 10 and the 100 is a percentage dice. If you roll these two together, you could get any number between 0 and 100, so it's like a percentage. And then the 20 is going to be the one that you use for most of what you're going to be doing. If you want to try to do something in the game, like if you want to try to jump over a hole in the ground, this is what you're going to use. And the way that it tends to work is a 1 is the worst thing you could get, and a 20 is the best thing you could get. And then everything else for when we get to the character sheet, your like stats, like how strong you are, how fast you are, all that stuff will be added to the dice to determine whether or not you're able to succeed. And keep in mind too, in a future video we'll get more into how to actually run a game of Dungeons and Dragons. I'm gonna eventually walk you guys through how to make a character. Today it's just looking at some of the basics. So let's switch on over to our character sheet here, where if you'll notice we got 3 separate sheets. We're not going to go super in-depth on most of them, because a lot of them are fairly self-explanatory, but we have the one here on my right has everything about your character, how much health they have, how strong they are, how fast they are, how much health they have, that kind of thing. This second sheet in the middle here is more the personal side of your character. This has a box for how they look, how old they are, how tall they are, any of their friends, anyone that they know, their backstory, what happened to them before they started to get into the game, and then any additional features and traits. So maybe they're left-handed. You know, if you want to take that kind of control over your character, this is the sheet that you'll do that on. And the last one is going to be about spells. So if you have a character who doesn't use spells, this third sheet might not be used super often. If you have a character that is mostly spells, something like a wizard, then this sheet's going to come up quite a bit. But this is the only physical stuff you need for Dungeons and Dragons. Everything else is going to be role-playing, story stuff with your friends, coming up with a story together, going on adventures together, solving problems. That's the main ideas of Dungeons and Dragons. And for those who don't quite know about the game itself, you're going to be taking the role of one individual character, while another person in your friend group, or maybe it's you, plays the role of the Dungeon Master, the person who plays all of the other characters in the world, the bad guys, the friends, the families, the like shopkeepers, things like that. And At some point in the future, we will get into that stuff as well. I think that's another video. But for this one, let's take a look at the actual words on some of these sheets, and then we can move on from there. So to start with our first sheet here, some of it is going to be kind of easy to go through, some of it's going to be a little bit harder. But starting at the top here, we have the character name. So this would be the name of the person you are playing, not your actual name, because your actual name goes up here where we see player name. And then all the specifics of your character, so their background, like what did they used to do? Maybe they used to be a shopkeeper. Maybe they used to be, a musician, something like that. Your class and your level, so that depends. Are you going to be a wizard? Are you going to be a fighter? Are you going to be, anything else that could show up? And then your level. Most levels start at level 1, obviously, and work their way up to level 20. The race of your character, that would be, are you an elf, a human, an orc, things like that. And then alignment is how your character acts. And there's a scale of lawful through chaotic, and then good through evil, and most characters tend to fit somewhere on that spectrum. That is, again, something we'll cover in a different video. Moving further down the list, we see something called inspiration. This is something your DM or Dungeon Master can give to players who are doing a good job in-game. Maybe they did something super creative with their character, or they did something super awesome storytelling-wise. Your proficiency bonus here would be like how good you are at certain things. And the higher your level, the more you're going to be proficient, or the more you're going to be good at certain things. Over here we have your armor class. This is going to be a number usually between about 9 and 20. And this is the number that the bad guys would have to roll to hit your character. So I'll bring our dice back in here. If on a d20 we roll and we get a 4, we could only hit this person if their armor class is a 4 or lower. So most likely not going to hit them because, like I said, most armor classes tend to be between 9 and 20. Your initiative here is how fast your character is when a fight starts. So the higher it is, the more likely the chance that you get to go first, because once combat starts, things go in turns. Your speed is how fast your character can move. Your current hit points is your health. And then every once in a while in the game, you could get like temporary hit points, things that kind of boost your health a little bit. That would go in here. Your hit dice go in here. These are specifics for each of your classes that whenever your character takes a bit of a break, they could roll some of these dice to heal up a little bit. In here we have death saves. Now, this is a part where if your character gets knocked out in combat, there's a good chance they could maybe die. So you would roll your d20, and if you get a 10 or higher, that is a success. If you get a 9 or lower, that's a failure. And unfortunately, if your character fails 3 times, they would die. If they succeed 3 times, then they're good to go. They're still hurt, but they're alive. And this is something we'll talk a little bit more about in the future, because we will do a video on combat in D&D. Over here on the right, we have personality traits, ideals, bonds, and flaws. These are kind of like the personality of your character. Personality traits, maybe they're super smart, right? And they know a lot about what's going on in the world. Their ideals, maybe they refuse to ever leave anybody behind. This is the stuff that they will always do no matter what. Their bonds, these are going to be people that they know. Maybe they have a family. Maybe they have friends. And then their flaws are things that they struggle with a little bit. Maybe your character is just, hard to understand. Maybe they don't say what they want to say super well. Let's see. Let's go over to this side. This is the most complicated part of it over here. But these are going to be your stats, or what your character can do. And if you notice, there's 6 of them. So we have strength, which is how strong your character is. Dexterity, which is how fast your character is. Constitution, which is like the health of your character. The intelligence is kind of like how book smart your character is, like maybe they've gone to school before. Your wisdom would be kind of like how street smart they are, like they know to avoid some kind of sticky situations. And then your charisma is how good you are with people. So when a game starts and you're making your character, and again, we'll go over making a character in a future video as well, you would just fill in these boxes with numbers between 1 and 20. Again, 20 being you're really good at these things, 1 being you're not so good at these things. And then those stats are going to deal with these saving throws and these skills. These saving throws are going to be if you try to dodge out of the way of something or push something that's a little bit too heavy, you would make a saving throw with strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. And then these stats also determine other specific stats that your character has. Things like acrobatics. Are you able to, do some cool flips? Some animal handling. Can you deal with animals? Arcana would be magic. Athletics would be things like running. Deception would be lying to people. History is how much you know about the past. Insight is being able to tell if other people are lying to you. Intimidation is scaring people to get what you want. Investigation is looking for things that might be a little bit hidden. Medicine would be healing. Nature would be determining what in the woods might help you or hurt you. Perception is just kind of looking around and seeing if things are different or if they've changed. Performance would be maybe musical, singing, showing off. Persuasion is convincing people to do what you want. Religion is how much you know about a god or a certain set of gods. Sleight of hand would be doing things with your hands that people wouldn't be able to see, like magic tricks or pickpocketing. Stealth is sneaking, trying to make sure that other people don't see you. And survival, it just determines how good you could be at surviving, like starting a fire or cooking food, things like that. The other boxes on here are going to be for the actual things that your character is either good at or has on their person. So, for example, your passive wisdom here, your perception, that is going to be what you can see without having to actually roll the dice for it. So if this is super high, you can see quite a bit of stuff. Your other proficiencies and languages, this might be the different languages your character can speak. This might be the kits and materials that your character is good at using. Like maybe they're super good with an instrument. That would all go in here. This box here is your attacks and your spellcasting. So if you have a weapon, you would put the weapon in here, how much damage it does, all the information you need for that. Down here in equipment is stuff that your character physically has on their person. Maybe they have a sword. Maybe they have a healing potion. Maybe they have, some fancy hat that they picked up in their travels. That would all go in here. And then these little boxes on the side are for money. Now, the money in Dungeons and Dragons is split up into 5 separate categories. That is, copper pieces, silver pieces, electrum pieces, gold pieces, and platinum pieces. Obviously, platinum is the most expensive, copper is the least expensive. And then our final box here, we have features and traits. This would be things that your character has that they didn't really need to be trained in, or that they've been able to pick up over a long period of time. It could be things like dark vision, being able to see in the dark. It could be, if you are, for example, a barbarian, the ability to go into a rage and use your anger as an ability to attack things. But that is the main idea behind the front page of this character sheet. The second page, we're not going to go over too much because most of this is very similar to the first one here. We have your character's appearance up top, so age, height, weight, eyes, skin, hair, anything to personalize them. Their appearance, what they look like. Their allies and organizations, maybe they were part of a guild somewhere or part of a group somewhere, that would go in here. Their backstory, things that they did before their current adventure started. Additional features and traits, so if you run out of space here on this first page, you have an extra box here, because you're going to need those, trust me. And then treasure. Maybe you've picked up a whole bunch of shiny objects. You've got some bracelets, you've got some necklaces, some gold. You can put that in your treasure spot there. And our final page, like I mentioned before, is for spell casting. So if your character doesn't cast spells, you don't have to worry too much about this. But if they do cast spells, you're going to want to know what your class is. Are you a wizard? Are you a warlock or a sorcerer? How you cast your spells. So do you use your charisma or do you use your intelligence? Your spell save DC is, if you cast a spell that affects somebody, this is the number they're going to have to roll to avoid your spell or to get out of your spell. Your spell attack bonus, maybe you throw a fireball at somebody. You get to add whatever number is in this box to whatever number you roll on your d20. And then everything else on here are the different levels of spells. So cantrips are spells that can be cast at any time, any day. You can use them as many times as you want. First through 9th level spells, you only get so many every single day, and that's going to depend on your class. So we will get into that in future videos. But that is the basics of Dungeons and Dragons. The idea of the physical aspect of things that we need, whether it's the dice, whether it's the sheets. And like I said earlier, I will make sure to put some information in the description of this video in case you want digital options for all this, just in case the physical aspect of it is a little bit more complicated right now. I understand. But if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I'll always respond in the comments. And if there's anything that I missed, or if there's anything that you want to know more about, please let me know. And I will see you all on the other side of the Dungeon Learner's Guide.